You are now tuned in to the Storm Tracker Podcast.
Welcome back, family, to the Storm Tracker Podcast. I'm Marcus Benjamin, representing for CanesCounty.com, part of the Rivals.com network. And I'm joined today by Larry Blustein, the number one South Florida reporter. Let me just say that. And, you know, he's been doing it for a long time, covers high school football better than anybody, and also covers the Hurricanes as well. He's joining me today to talk some Hurricane football and recruiting. Thanks for joining me today, Larry.
Oh, thank you, Marcus. I appreciate it. Busy, coming to a busy end of the spring. It's it's been really, really hectic as far as, getting to see as many schools as possible. I had an opportunity also 2 weeks ago to go up to the Tampa area, and got a chance to see a University of Miami prospect and the kid Gerard Pringle, the running back from Armwood. Got a chance to watch him and look good. And then Tampa Bay Tech, went over and saw, a couple of really good kids over at Jesuit, and then worked my way down through, Vanguard, Venice and Sarasota and Naples. So I had a chance in 4 days to see 11, 12 schools and a lot of talent. But then it's nothing like coming back home, because I'll tell you what, the prospects and the football talent in South Florida are crazy.
Yeah, since you mentioned that, I kind of want to find out how did Gerard Pringle look, the Miami commit?
Very good. I first saw him as an eighth grader during the summer when they played at USF in a 7-on-7, and he was playing receiver at the time. And over the next couple of years, they kind of moved him over to the running back position. He's got he's got great vision, he's got shake, and he's got one of those bodies where, if you hit him from the belt buckle down, you're wasting your time, because he's really strong. And I'm not comparing him to Tyrone Moss, but that style, you couldn't hit Tyrone below the belt buckle and be successful. You'd have to get him up top. And that's what Pringle's got great vision. Yeah, he's a deal. I got a chance to talk to him for a little bit. He's a really nice guy. He's so looking forward to coming to Miami. He's excited. He's always been a Hurricane guy, Hurricane fan. He's always watched them. And, you're up in the Tampa area, and it's pretty much for the Florida Gators. And
sure.
But, he's in a lot of the team from Armwood went there. But, yeah, and it was good to see a lot of the talent that, the area. I saw the younger Pickett, who's at Tampa Bay Tech now. He's a 2026 kid,
Sure.
Big time player. And Miami's really entrenched with the entire Pickett family. So
yeah, they're trying to build a picket fence.
Yes, there you
go. With those kids. Also, just one more kid I wanted to ask you about, since you said you went to Tampa Bay Tech, is Dallas Wilson. That's a kid that Miami really likes. So what do you think of him?
Well, I have an argument going with John Santucci from USA Today, where he figures that Dallas is the best receiver in the state for the class. I happen to think that Cortez Mills from Homestead is. Right. It's just, but he's the deal. He's every bit the part. He catches the ball real well. He gets open. He's obviously a national kid, so it's sort of like apples and oranges at that point. Whoever you happen to see. I also think that the kid Joshua Moore from West Broward is way under the radar, because he's 6'3" and he weighs 200 pounds and he runs good patterns. And neither Cortez Mills or Wilson are that tall, are that big. They're just good sized kids who can catch the ball. But yeah, we got some really good receiving core. But I'll tell you this, Miami, and I know you're going to ask that in a few minutes, so we'll wait to talk about some of the kids that Miami's looking at and should get in this class. And if they get them, it's going to be pretty interesting. So I'll leave it there. And then when we come back to that subject, I'll talk about a few kids.
I mean, since we're already on the topic, we might as well kind of keep going with it. Yeah, you talked about Cortez Mills, and
he's a must. He's a
Joshua
must.
Moore.
He's a must. He's a, if Miami's going to land anybody, from that, in this area, in the South Florida area, it's got to be him. I mean, he's a whole different level type of kid. He turns the game around. He's tough to cover, and he runs really good pattern. And that's the thing. When you have kids who are elite all their lives, like a Jeremiah or any of those kids like that, sometimes they don't feel the necessity to run those type of patterns because they're faster, they're bigger. So they, it's sort of like being in the street. Hey, hit me at the Volvo taillights, and they'll get there. So, but
Right.
he does. He runs really good patterns, and there's another guy who I think that I don't know if he's been under the radar, but he's essentially a big time defensive lineman is Randy Adarica from Miami Central. He's gained 40 pounds. I think you saw him at the Rivals camp, and he got bigger and bigger. And the same thing when he was at Under Armour. I think, he would be a great compliment to Bain and all, everybody else that they've got on that line. I think he is one of those kids that everybody's kind of, got to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Randy. I think he, would continue that pipeline from Miami Central to Miami with, Armando Blunt or Ruben Bain, and then possibly a Randy Alderica. But showing highlights right now of Cortez Mills.
Different dude.
Yeah, just his catch radius is actually something that's probably underrated. I think he's one of the best route runners in the entire state of Florida. He's
4-year starter this year, 4-year varsity starter, which is, pretty damn good for a team that went to state 2 years in a row.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's helped kind of, put Homestead, I guess, on the map within these past 4 years because, went to the state championship 2 years in a row, and you think that they'll make it there again, right?
I think they've got a really good shot, with St. Thomas out of the way and not in their, class. And even then, everyone's still talking about last year where Homestead had every chance in the world to win that game, by kicking a field goal and tying it. But there'll be obstacles in South Florida. Obviously, Southridge is going to be an obstacle district team who, 2 years ago beat them, but that was without Joshua Townsend. But I think that Monarch has really made some major strides. They've added 18 kids in the offseason. And then West Boca, who is another program that has added a lot of firepower. They've got a really, really good offense and defensive lines, one of the best running backs in 2026. But I think Homestead's got more talent. I think they've got their coaching is really superior. And they're a very disciplined team. And they would, if they get there, it would probably be either against Mandarin or Armwood, as I mentioned, or Tampa Bay Tech, or one of those programs like that. But I have a belief that they could get there 3 years in a row, and that's pretty damn good for a program, for a public school. Outside of Miami Central, there's been very few public schools in South Florida that have had that success.
Yeah, that have really been consistent. Not since the days of Miami Northwestern.
Right.
Have we really seen that type of consistency from a public school? But maybe Teddy Bridgewater may be bringing that program
he
back.
Will. Yeah.
So you talked about Cortez Mills, love him. Joshua Moore as well. I think Miami's in a really good spot for Joshua Moore. Cortez Mills, we'll see. Randy Alderica, we'll also see how all that kind of pans out. But a couple other guys I wanted to talk about is Byron Lewis, the running back from American Heritage. Miami's really interested in to add him or couple him rather with Gerard Pringle. And then Bryce Fitzgerald, the two-way player from Columbus, is a player that Miami's definitely interested in. All of the aforementioned players will be visiting officially to Miami in the next upcoming weeks. What do you think of Byron Lewis and Bryce Fitzgerald and maybe their chances to commit to Miami, and just what you've seen from them from their high school career?
Byron Lewis, one of those guys, a next level type of kid. Remember, he actually the year Fletcher's senior year at Heritage, he actually split time with him as a freshman.
Yeah.
Big, quick, strong, intelligent kid.
Yeah.
He beat out a really good kid in Desanor who has transferred up to Palm Beach County now. And that's saying a lot because Desanor in that class of 26 is one of the best around. The opportunity to try to, look at some of the other kids that you mentioned, obviously the Bryce Fitzgerald kid, basketball stud at Berlin. He helped them win a state title. Football wise, he has shown, as a defensive back, he can lock you down. And as a wide receiver, he can get open. He's a good kick returner, great athlete. Actually related to one of the kids who used to play running back at Berlin Jesuit back in the day. So he's got athletic talent. He's a kid that everybody needs to keep an eye on.
Awesome. Just one more guy that just kind of came to mind for me that will be also officially visiting Miami is Ezekiel Marcelin, linebacker who always seems to make plays. I mean, he made the play against IMG Academy, forcing a fumble. Then he made another play again in the state title game, forcing a fumble on Malachi Tony, another Miami commit. From what I hear, Malachi Tony is still bitter about that play and still wants to kind of, prove himself. And we'll certainly see a lot of him in the upcoming years. What can you say about Ezekiel Marcelin and his chances maybe committed to Miami?
Remember, he started in the state championship game as a freshman, and he's played a lot of significant snaps as a ninth grader. He's worked his way. This is a kid that I kind of liken to Wesley Basaint because of the fact that his tackling skills are superior. He has a little bit more speed than Wesley. He could get into the secondary and cover. If he has to pair with a linebacker or maybe even, a tight end and stick with a tight end coming out of the backfield until a safety, comes into play. Great kid, 3'6" student in the classroom, typical Miami type of guy, family's very close-knit family. I think that would be a great fit. He's getting bigger. We'll be over 200 by the time, the season comes to an end. Probably a ceiling about 220, 225, a little bit like Sean Spence was, who I got a chance to see, who's now an assistant coach at Western Michigan now. And he's on the other end recruiting these kids. And, it was great to see two Canes at the over the weekend. He and DeMarcus Van Dyke, who is at the University of South Florida now as a DB coach. And that's it's good to see guys like that who used to, and Joel Rodriguez, former Monsignor Pace lineman that went to Miami, who's, also doing a tremendous job at Akron. So it's good to see that. But the guys that you mentioned would definitely be targets that Miami needs to come away with for the next cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great comparison with Sean Spence to Ezekiel Marcelin. I mean, a smaller type of back, but really quick and comes and brings the wood every time.
Oh, yeah.
So very, very good comparison there. Just name dropping as usual, as you do, Larry. You got Tyron Moss earlier, and now Sean Spence here. Actually going to ask one more because we're actually going to go to the Chaminade scrimmage, in a couple of days here. And Miami's really high on CJ Ewald. This cornerback is, really crafty, very technically sound, really aggressive hands to knock balls away. What can you say about CJ Ewald and his potential going forward?
Well, I looked at him and I saw him earlier, in the spring. And I remember when he committed to Michigan, as a junior, and he's a kid that actually played 5 years of varsity football. Just a student of the game. Father's hugely involved in coaching with him and playing on 7-on-7 team. And he's probably grown physically as much as anybody over the last 10 months. He's a big, strong kid. We've had him on the radio show. He's well-spoken. He's very knowledgeable about the position. Definitely you get him in that secondary in the future with, some of the young kids Miami has, like Patterson, who he played with as well. Yeah, he's an elite kid. He's an elite kid. So, I mean, if he ended up at Ohio State or Alabama or, one of these Georgia type programs, you say, oh, well, he's a fit. And so if Miami is in that conversation, that's a great thing, because this kid's a potential, and I say potential, play on Sunday type kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Georgia and Louisville seem like they are the two top contenders for CJ Ewald, along with
Louisville's really
Miami.
making some inroads in South Florida.
Yeah, you might want to call it Miamiville, because it's got so many kids they are plucking from South Florida, and they have their eyes on Ewald as well. Larry Blustein once again joining me from 560 WQAM. Also, make sure you visit his website, LarryBlustein.com. Larry, just kind of wanted to talk about, also, we had the NFL draft, and a lot of NFL fans do come to this podcast and come to this YouTube channel, and they want to see what kind of players that they are getting from the University of Miami. Of course, Cameron Kinchins was the first player to come off the board. And then you also had players like Jaden Davis, James Williams, Matt Lee also come off the board for the Miami Hurricanes. And a couple of undrafted guys were selected as well, and Javion Cohen and Leonard Taylor, Tyler Harrow, Branson Dean. With all of these guys, which one of these NFL teams do you think will be most pleased with their new Miami Hurricane?
Well, I might be biased being a Ram fan, but Cam Kinchins would be pretty darn good. And, here's a guy that, the Rams need safety, help. And certainly I think he has a chip on his shoulder to prove that he's a better than third round pick. And you and I, thought, when we talked earlier in the year, that he may work his way with a good, workouts and a good combine, but he really didn't run very well, which I'm getting to think is kind of overrated with that speed stuff, because, can you play the game? If you judge this on somebody back in the day, like, Zach Thomas, who came out of college at 5'7.5", 5'8", and 225 and ran a 4.75, and you say to yourself, I'm not, why would I take a chance on him? But yet he was one of the best defensive players the Dolphins ever had. He's a Hall of Famer. And I'm a football production type of guy, Marcus. That's why I go to so many events, because if you run a 4.46 or a 4.4 or 4.39 and you can't play football, all it does is get you faster to a position to make a mistake. So if you could play the game, I'd much rather take a kid who runs a 4.56 or 4.6 that has an opportunity to know how to tackle, to read, to read offenses. And I think that's what Cam Kinchins does. Really surprised about Leonard Taylor. Here's a guy that it's one of those things. That's why I don't listen to those prognosticators, because when he came on campus in the second year, he'll be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. And he fell right out, like a buddy of mine during the draft texted me and said, you realize that 3 long snappers and 2 punters have gone before him. And, it kind of puts it into perspective that somebody really may not have seen what everybody else saw. And so he's got a lot of proving to go. I think that James Williams, because they've already moved him to a linebacker position, he's wearing 52. So I think that that's one of those players that they looked at him and, just like his senior year where in high school where Pat Surtain moved him closer to the action.
Sure.
I mean, you're 6'5". You're going to be 240 down the line. You're almost wasting your talents being a safety. You want that guy to be in the front seven. And that's what's going to happen at this next level. They're going to give him a real good shot to prove himself. I think he's another one of those guys that has a chip on their shoulder, and I think he's going to be a really good pro. We know Matt Lee's got the athleticism and the knowledge and the technical savvy to play at the next level. The center position is really a commodity in the league, and if you're really good, you can hang around for a long time. Look at Jason Kelsey, who was really actually brought in as I believe as a fullback, from Cincinnati. And then all of a sudden he turned out to be one of the premier centers of a generation with the Eagles. So I think that's who I compare Matt Lee to, because of the fact that he's very technically sound. He's very intelligent. And, and so that's another guy that I think makes the roster. I think he sticks. With Javion Cohen, you got a guy like that who we know has the athletic ability, but there's got to be a reason why he wasn't selected. And I think that a lot of these people saw maybe, a step slow, maybe work ethic, and said, well, if he's going to do it, let him prove himself as a free agent, and he'll have an opportunity. It's never easy for these guys. So,
sure.
And I don't listen to this prognostications of, what's his name, the offensive lineman that Miami had last couple of years, that everyone's, he's going to be a first round draft pick, but he never really played because he was hurt all the time. Can't think of his name.
Zion Nelson.
Yeah, Nelson. So, I think, that's the thing. It's setting the table, though, for a future with Miami, because they've got some really, really good kids that are going to be very draftable over the next few years. And this is a big season coming up for them. But as far as the draft, it pretty went what I thought. I just thought Leonard Taylor not going was kind of a surprise, because, he's big and strong, and, he's athletic. And if you're somebody, just take a flyer on him, say, okay, come on, so, but that's it. I just thought no surprises. I think Cam Kinchens did himself in. He should have come to the combine and say, hey, listen, you know what? I pulled a groin, because everybody watched him, and
Right.
They know how good he is. So, but I think that the time kind of scared people. And it's sad, that in a game of football, you have to worry about what a kid can run. It's sort of like, I laugh and at the fact that they judge linemen on the 40. When was the last time you saw a lineman run 40 yards? I mean, that's I think that what they do in 10 and 20 yards should be an indication if they're going off of speed. So I think a lot of these kids, who run 5'8" or 5'9" as offensive linemen, it's not real fair, because they're never going to run 40 yards.
Right. Absolutely. It definitely is overblown. I think that a lot of the fastest guys don't last pretty long in the league. I mean, Justin Ross and a lot of other guys didn't really last long in the league. So definitely overblown. Wishing all the best to all the Hurricanes in now going to be in the NFL. Of course, with the transition of those players moving on, there is a need to add to the roster. And Miami kind of addressed those needs here in the offseason, adding 5 transfers to the roster, and, also the recruiting class coming up. And, Cam Ward has a chance to really kind of take this team to the next level here. And the next level would be a conference championship. And I think that's kind of what everybody wants to know. Is this team good enough to win the ACC? ESPN came out and had them ranked 24th. I mean, you just basically just said that, you don't pay attention to prognosticators, but it's an indication that people are kind of noticing the influx of talent that is coming to Coral Gables to hopefully make a run for a ACC title. Question is, Larry, will they do it? Can they do it? I mean, right now they are 3rd when it comes to the best odds to win the conference behind Florida State and Clemson. Can they overtake those two teams to win the conference?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that, everyone's kind of looking at the opening game against Florida as a barometer, even though Florida has a chance to be like 5-7 this year because of their schedule. I mean, it's crazy to say that, but you look at them and UCF, who have some good personnel, but both of them could win 4 or 5 games this year. Miami's schedule is played in their favor. Playing Virginia Tech and FSU at home are definitely big pluses for them. They went up to Tallahassee last year and gave FSU all they can handle. You think if Emory doesn't get hurt, maybe Miami can win that game. To answer your question, yes. So I think Miami right now potentially is a top 12 team. I really do. I think they have an opportunity to be in the playoffs this year. Offensively, they're going to score 40, 45 points a game. You got the number 1 quarterback, the number 1 wide receiver in Brown, and the number 1 running back out of the portal. And those are 3 need places. Even though they have talent at receiver with Restrepo and some of the other guys that have shown up, you have a proven commodity. A guy caught 96 balls in the same offense that he's going to be playing in. You have a quarterback who obviously showed in the spring that he can make plays, and he's going to be a very integral part of what Miami does. I think their offensive line now is probably the strongest part of their offense, which is kind of funny because 2-3 years ago, I remember talking with our colleague Alex Dono, when we were talking, I said, do you watch Miami's offense? The offensive line gets pushed back into the running back 5 yards. And that's why Miami never really got anything going offensively a couple of years ago. But I think this year with the weapons they have, with the additions, I think they got to take the wrapping fully off of Ray Joseph because he's a big time kid and he can make plays. I think that, some of the other kids getting a Johnson at running backs are going to get more of an opportunity. I just think offensively they're going to be really, really good. Defensive front is crazy good. We know that. I mean, and they're adding more and more. The kid Barrow, I think he becomes Bain's best friend, because if you start double teaming Bain, Barrow's going to kill you. He'll lead the conference in sacks, even from the inside. That's how good he is. Obviously, you have all those defensive ends. I mean, if you lose a guy like Wayne, you lose a guy like the young man from Dillard, who I thought was really, really good. Scott, what's his name? I forgot.
Nigel Lee Kelly.
Yeah, I'm getting old. But you lose those type of guys. That means you have some really, really good players, and they do. And you got the kid Scott coming in, who's was a premier athlete. So the only place that I'm in linebacker, I think that you see Popo coming on and making great strides. You still have Mawanoan, you still have Wes, and there's a few other guys. I think secondary is where there's a concern, only because of depth. I mean, Darryl Porter had a really, really good spring. I think he comes in as the guy. They just got another transfer, the kid that worked with at Marshall, who's really, really good. So I think Miami's got the talent. Things have to come together, and I think the front seven will afford the secondary more leeway and more time to kind of adjust and learn together. They've got potential with Brown and some of those other kids to have a good secondary, but experience is everything. And I don't think that the defensive front seven is going to hang them out to dry as maybe happened in the past. I think they're going to be aggressive up front. You're not going to be able to run on Miami, and they've got enough talent, especially with the scheme, that they have to cause some problems. And obviously they got one of the best kickers, if not the best kicker in the country. They're a top 12 team. They're an 11-win team. They really are. They're an 11-win team. And, I thought last year when I said they'd win 7, it was justified. They were lucky to win 7. And they could have been better if the Georgia Tech game played out, obviously. But, I think they've got a shot to be a top 12 team. If not win the ACC, be in that, conversation. FSU still strong. I'm not overly hyped up about Clemson. They didn't hit the portal very well. They're relying on all their, all their players. And I think that, it was talking about Miami won the portal nationally.
Yeah.
And that's huge because
It
they
is.
already had, like you said, a great recruiting class over the last 2 years. So
Yeah.
you infuse them with some of those, seasoned studs that they picked up. And
Sure.
yeah, I think they got a real good shot.
Yeah, absolutely. Hurricanes are going to love to hear that you think that they are a top 12 team. I agree with you. I think this team is really going to take the nation by surprise. Great point about Bain and Barrow, and I think Akeem Mesidor. Just the fact that
Sure.
you're going to have Akeem Mesidor play with Bain because I don't know if people remember that Akeem Mesidor was their best defensive lineman 2 years
Yeah.
ago. Now
Yeah.
you couple him with Bain, who was the best defensive lineman last year, and you add some of these transfer guys, then that should be a ferocious defensive line. And I agree with you 100% about the defensive backs. That was the point I was going to make as well, is the depth. I mean, and the production. You kind of want to see these guys really kind of step up, like a Jadias Richard and a Damari
Yeah.
Brown. And of the transfer that you mentioned, Deani Hill from Marshall, I think that was a really key pickup for them. Perhaps, as far as depth is concerned, probably one of the more important pieces to add. But Daryl Porter Jr. has to really kind of take his, uh, game to the next level.
Yeah.
To really solidify this defensive backfield, and players like
Look
Rashawn.
great in the spring. I thought you look really good in the spring. Won a
Absolutely.
lot of battles, with a lot of receivers who were trying to, prove a point. When you have some of these kids that are, being questioned as receivers, then they're going to give you your best. And I thought that Daryl Porter, in the times that I got a chance to see him, did really well. I mean, he gets it. He's got the knowledge. He's been around the game, all his life with his dad playing, and kind of giving him pointers, being at, a program, in high school and then going to West Virginia and now settling in with Miami. I think he's going to be the catalyst, but there's going to be some other talent that's going to need to come through, and we'll tell a lot in the opening game, because as I said, and I went out on a limb and I said, by the end of the first game against Florida, there's a couple of players that are going to start to emerge. And obviously the young man from Bishop Gorman, who I think Elijah Lofton, who I think potentially could be one of the best football players in the country. Because plays 4, 5, 6 different positions. When I saw him in the scrimmage against Miami, and he pulled away from everybody when he ran the ball, and he's not even, noted as a running back, but he's going to have to carry some of that load as well. But here's a kid that plays an H-back position. He's almost a nightmare to cover. He could do, I mean, if you ever went to a Wildcat, he'd be the Wildcat. And as I said, last year in the state championship game against Liberty, and when he was playing at Bishop Gorman, he ran for one, he threw for one, he intercepted a ball, and he caught one. So he had 4 touchdowns and 4 different capacity, and played in the defensive linebacker position, safety. So there's a kid that I think is going to infuse this program. If anybody said what freshman's going to make the most impact, he's got the ability. If they take that Lamborghini and take it out of the garage, he'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody wants to see that car run all over Florida as far as Hurricanes fans are concerned. Really excited for that game and the season. So what we do have left on this podcast before I let you go is that the baseball team. I don't get to talk too much baseball with anybody, but it is coming into we have completed the regular season, and now we are in the ACC tournament known as the ACC Championship. And I know you follow baseball, and I know you followed the team and kind of seen them this year. They open up against Louisville today, and then they play Clemson in a couple of days, who's one of the best teams in the entire country. What do you think their chances are here in this ACC championship, Lou?
Tough year, obviously. It was such a up and down year. They went in the streaks on both sides, wins and losses. I don't think they have the overall depth to win in the ACC, to be honest with you. I mean, there's, as you mentioned, you have Louisville and you have North Carolina and some of those other Virginia and programs like that, and Clemson, that have more depth, have more pitching, Miami offensively can slug it out with a lot of teams, but I think it comes down to overall pitching, and I think that Miami doesn't have the staff that could carry them to a ACC title. Now, I could be wrong, but they would have to get pretty darn hot, and guys who have 5 and 6 ERAs are going to have to step it up, because there's games where you're going to get the aces of the Louisvilles and some of those programs that are only used to giving up 2 runs a game at the most. So if you get in a position where you're giving up 5 runs, you're going to lose. And so the pitchers have to come through. They have to, step it up a notch, and we'll see. But this just wasn't a great year for them. It wasn't a typical year for them. They were on the losing side mostly the entire year. So I'm hoping that, they could pull a rabbit out of the hat. But, to be honest, it doesn't look promising. But, listen, we're going to root them on. We're going to hope that they come up with these, unorthodox wins, and maybe pull some surprises and win a couple of games here in the ACC. So it's and it's weird because you look last year, and Florida State was pretty much in the same situation as Miami, and had one of their worst years. Now didn't make an NCAA playoff for the first time in a long time. It just the ACC,
and then it turned around for them this year.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. So anything could happen. But the ACC is such a gauntlet. I mean, the Atlantic Seaboard has so much talent. The South has so much talent, and that's just, the SEC's got their teams, but the ACC top to bottom is just really going to be tough to beat. There's more guys that are drafted out of the ACC every year, and we see a lot of those kids succeed. The NC States with Carlos Rodon and guys like that who have gone on and have done well. But, year one has been a challenge.
For JD,
for JD Arteaga. So hopefully they'll build on it, have a good summer. And get a couple of kids into the summer leagues like the Cape Cod League and such, and come away with in this new transfer portal world, anything could happen. You could all of a sudden Miami could find a few bucks to bring in some really highly regarded college kids, and the transformation is complete. I always look at this: if you have 3 good pitchers, if you have 2 good starters and a good reliever, they can carry you a long, long way. And look at LSU. That's what happens with them a lot, where they get those 2 main starters and they got a good middle guy or a good closer, and that gets them into the College World Series. So it's not an exact science. It's what it takes anymore. I just feel from a standpoint, if you have some really good hitting, some good power, which Miami does, you also have to have a good pitching staff, not a great one, but a reliable one where, your Friday night starter and perhaps your Saturday guy, combine and are under 3 in their ERA and win 15, 14 games. And then you got a reliever who stops almost every opponent when it's 2-1 or 4-3, in the late innings. So, but yeah, we'll root them on, but from a reality standpoint, I don't think they have the overall talent to make it really far in the ACC.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. You certainly need Daniel Cuvée to continue his hot streak. He's been outstanding. He basically kind of replaced Yo-Yo, which is saying a lot. Yo-Yo is an outstanding player. And then losing Blake Sear to a thumb injury. He had thumb surgery.
That hurt.
Was definitely tough. Those are 2 guys that you kind of want to keep for next year. Hopefully they can hold on to those guys, add some pieces like you said, add some guys to the pitching staff. Gage Zeal has had an unbelievable year. He's definitely been your Friday night ace this season, but you need some of the other pitchers to really kind of step up big time for them to make a run in this ACC championship. Larry Blustein, ladies and gentlemen, joining me today. I really appreciate you joining me. Tell the people just how they can find more stuff from you.
Yeah, we're on every Monday night, 6 to 8 on WQAM, as you join us a lot during the course, and we thank that. You add your perspective. You have a great perspective on University of Miami football, and then we have a lot of good guests, a lot of college coaches. Our show last night, we paid homage to Douglas High School in Parkland, winning their 4th straight state baseball title. I mean,
Wow.
this is a team that had 59 wins in a row before it was broken. So we did that. We had a look at Kelly Sejour, who's a defensive back at Chaminade, who's really done a tremendous job. He was at Central for a while as well. And speaking about
Big
that,
great at
Ace
the
Coleman.
rivals game.
And we had Ace Coleman on last night, Anwan Coleman, who might be as versatile as all the talent that Central has. He may be as versatile as anybody. He lined up a quarterback last year. He's a receiver. He runs the ball. He does anything. And both of them, which are great, have over 3.5 GPAs. And that's the name of the game. And then, we're focusing in on a lot of the local high school coaches, checking out how they're doing as well. So you can follow us there. Also on Blustein.com, as you mentioned before. It's solely for Dayton, Broward, free content, a lot of stuff, player stuff, rankings locally. We have lists of kids, and then our big thing is prepredzone.com, Florida. Between the other two writers, we put out a whole lot of content. I do a daily look at one team around the state. We've had 65 of them in the off season so far, and we're going to keep those up throughout the course of the summer. So it gives you an opportunity. We have, and then the reduction of price, 50% off. And not only you get ours, but we have 43 other states that have kids. So if there's anybody you're ever looking for, so those are the things to do. Larry Blustein on our Facebook, Prep Red Zone, or our Twitter, X, whatever, Blustein Recruiting. So listen, we're there. Questions you have, we have, like I said, we have a whole bunch of content, and we put out close to 500 different players with their video and their GPA every month.
Outstanding stuff from Larry Blustein. Thanks again for joining me. That's going to wrap it up for the Storm Tracker podcast. Make sure you subscribe to canescounty.com for free. Use the promo code Miami30. Also, follow this podcast on all platforms and subscribe to this YouTube channel live from Canes County. Until the next episode.